This is one of those sessions that all of you would love to understand and hear, because it's not about equity, right? And a lot of our startups always face issue raising equity, raising capital. So today what we are discussing is not equity, but we're discussing non-equity, right? The ways in which non-equity fund can be raised. Now, most of you must be thinking, how would it be done? What would be the different mechanisms around it? What are the different techniques with which could be with this, it could be done? Now, if you really think, you must have raised most of it, but you really don't know the terms around it, right? And to give some knowledge around, what non-equity funding is all about, how it is done, what different things are to be taken care while raising such funds. We have Swarandeep. Swarandeep is an old friend and has been helping startups for the last few years that I have been knowing him. Just to give a background to what he has been doing, Swarandeep is a fund associate and a community manager at Unleash. Most of you must have heard about Unleash. Unleash is a platform wherein youth leaders come together, stay together for almost 10 to 12 days, figure out what are the different solutions that could be done against meeting the SDGs. So he's passionate about solving complex problems. He's a mentor to a lot of startups and young leaders coming up with the solutions. He's passionate about sustainability in particular, and he's previously having experience with venture capitalists, the Axon Partners Group. So hey Swaran, the floor is yours. I really want you to help us understand more about non-equity funding. How are they raised? What kids or youth leaders can do to raise these funds. So over to you, Swaran, currently.
Sure. Thanks so much, Manglesh. Let me quickly share the screen and the presentation so that you have.
Surely. So what Swaran will be doing is taking us through some non-dilutive funding experiences that he has had, an overview around it, and really try and explain all of us today how it is done, what are the different mechanics around it, how different funding is looked at when it moves to the next level, what could be the funding amount that you could look towards. There are a lot of different things that go around with it, right? So yeah. Swaran would take us through a small PPT around it.
Just give me one minute.
Yeah, no issues. So while he's setting up, most of you, I would really like you all to come and ask as many questions or queries that you have. You could post it on the YouTube chat. You could post it on various channels. Some of you who have joined us on our different groups, you might ask your questions there too, and we'll try and answer most of them. And if they are not, we will text you later on. So by that time, Swaran is setting it up.
Yeah, I think I'm having some trouble with the full screen. I think it's not working as a full screen.
We can use the dialog box downstairs near the Zoom button. Right corner. Right side, right corner, on that only. Above. Uh-oh. Okay, your PPT. Just open your PPT.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just right near the Zoom button, you could see a screen with a window. If you can see near the Zoom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just prior to the minus of the Zoom, the slideshow button is there.
Okay.
Yeah. You no. Get back to your PPT. Technology, I tell you.
Yeah, let me, I think, start here as well without taking.
Yeah, you can please go ahead and start.
Like I have tried to capture most of the ways and mechanisms on how non-dilutive funding can be raised. So you would see like a honeycomb structure on the presentation right now, and like I've categorized it according to different colors. So like going one by one. So the ones in yellow, those are the most common ones. So grants, competitions, and revenue-based financing. So I would jump into them a little later, but let me kind of give you an overview first. This is the most common ones which are highlighted in blue. Then the ones which are highlighted in green, these are slightly less common. So like all the terms and references are related to each other, not in absolute terms. So the less common ones are recoverable grant, loan guarantees, and crowdfunding. As we go further, we have some slightly even lesser common models like pay for success, PRI debt, and variable repayment debt. And towards the very end, we have crowdfunding debt and convertible debt. And as you would see, like except for convertible debt, which is, you can call it as quasi equity because it has the potential to convert equity. All others are either grants or debt. There is no equity that no equity mechanism that I'm trying to cover today. The two typical instruments out of the three, so grants, debt, and equity, I would focus on grants and debt today. If I jump into the grant part, so what grants essentially are, they are gifts or donations that are made by either individuals or organizations, and or these organizations could be different types. It could be private foundations, public foundations, governments, research organization, academia or university, or even some, in some cases, private companies as well, which are giving these gifts and donations. How common are they in the market? These are like one of the very common ways on how two type of entities can raise. So this is equally valid for non-profits as well as for profit companies. And I think the common I would say probably misconception that exists is that grants are only valid for non-profits. That is usually not the case, although like in the non-profit world, that is the most common mechanism on how would you raise. But even for profit companies, this is a very valid way of raising money. And within the for profit world, both early stage and late stage ventures can raise. With early stage, it is typically for setting up either an R&D mechanism, like trying the research and development part or product development part. For later stage ventures, it is typically that they have existing business, but they want to venture into slightly uncertain territory or a risky territory for which they are seeking grants. So just to kind of help you relate it to what we are seeing currently. So for example, vaccine, take the example of vaccine development. So vaccine development is typically being done by pharma companies, or in some cases also by academic universities or like hospitals or research facilities within those academic facilities. So typically organizations such as say Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or Dell Foundation, or even with HNIs and other individuals, they are giving out grants to companies so that they can fasten the pace of this vaccine development. They can do all the research and development testing phase. So if you would see, like pharma is a very like established industry or business, but still they are able to access these grants because they are entering into uncertain territory, like vaccine development for COVID, a disease which did not exist till like early or late last year. The grants can be accessed even by those established companies. Similarly for like startups as well. So it is valid for non-profits, for profits, and established companies. How easy is difficult to obtain this is, it's usually easy. Like obviously every grant has associated terms and conditions associated with it on what you need to fulfill and be eligible for as you apply for these grants. And typically it does not come with any repayment. So this is like non-recoverable grant. So that's why you call it as a gift or donation, that once you give it to the necessary recipient or of the grant or the grantee company, there is no recourse that you are claiming that in future they would repay you back. So this is typically on the grant side. And like moving on, we have something we call as revenue based financing. So this is typically a kind of financial capital where you're not shedding equity or diluting equity, and investors inject capital into your business against a certain percentage of revenues that you would be earning. So it could be monthly revenues, it could be annual revenues. Like that is something that is negotiated by the two parties, the investor and the one seeking this financing. Um, how common it is in the market, it's not very common as of now. So very few players have started doing this. And like how easy, difficult for specifically early stage ventures is that it is like from on a difficulty level, it is medium difficult. The reason being that this is tied to your revenue. So in case you are at a stage of your startup where you are not earning revenues already, so obviously this mechanism cannot work for you. And also, like in terms of not just making revenue, but how stable are your revenues, because ultimately it is tied to the level of revenues that you are earning. In terms of financial burden, this is not like a returnable amount of money that is being generated. It is that I would show the decision tree on how investors make decision on the revenue based financing. But typically it is not directly returnable. So it is that you are earning revenues and you are sharing part of that revenues with your investor. And obviously, since your company and the revenue that you are earning is in perpetuity, that you would forever making revenues and doing business, there is a maximum cap on how much you can give to the investor. So there would be a certain multiple, say like 2x, 5x, that you are paying cumulatively to the investor. It cannot just go on forever. And it is typically not structured as a loan, but it is still an obligation that you have to return a certain amount of money every month or every quarter or every year to this investor. And like how does it basically give an upside to the investor, is that it is contingent that in case of a future fundraising round that happens, typically so this is typically a decision tree that is based for revenue based financing. So I make an initial investment into the business, and assuming both possibilities, that a future fundraise happens, so which is like a follow on, and non-follow-on, that there is no future round of capital that you are able to raise. So in case of a no follow-on round or no future fundraise, that you have to return capital. So either you return capital or you fail, basically your business shuts down and you are not able to sustain those revenues. In case of you're returning capital, obviously that return of capital could be partial or full. That say you started with 100 rupees or $100 that was invested into the business, and as percentage of the revenue that you are earning, you are able to either completely return that money, or you are able to only partially return the money before your like company say shut down, for example. And once that full amount is returned, then also you have like a residual a stake in the company, that a part of it like you have a future payoff that you can receive if the company like stays on the course and still decides to like do revenue. In case of a follow-on round that happens, either the follow-on round could be followed by a equity exit, that the equity investors get an exit, in which case you also get an exit proportional to the investment that you have done. So you don't directly hold equity, but your payoffs are as if you had invested in the business, and a proportion of that initial investment that you had made. And obviously in case the company fails, then obviously even after follow on, you don't really make money from the initial investment that you did. Coming to the third mechanism, which is a broad bucket, which is competition. So these competitions are there are various entities within for-profit, non-profit, government, academia, that to encourage entrepreneurs to come up and solve problems. They give this they host challenges, or they host competitions. For example, X Prize, like MIT does this, D Prize or MIT Solve. These kind of competitions, like Dell does a social entrepreneurship challenge. So there are so many of these competitions and challenges that happen in different geographies and in different times of the year. So this is like a broader bucket of competitions, and typically this is non-equity. Like most of these competitions give you that money, which is a grant, non-recoverable, but this is tied to you either winning the competition or standing in say top 3 or top 10, whatever their terms and conditions are. How common in the market? They're very, very common. How easy and difficult is, obviously it's moderately difficult, that they are like like in most cases it is the entire world, or like entrepreneurs from across the globe who are competing. So you can imagine that it is moderately difficult, or like highly difficult to obtain these competitions and the prize money that is associated with it. But this is also a very good way on tapping non-dilutive funding or non-equity funding for startups. And typically you don't have to repay this money that you raise through a competition or these challenges. And like there are obviously certain conditions in terms of how much you would might be in existence. So for example, in some cases it is startups which are less than 3 years into operations, or have raised less than 250,000 in equity, or are generating X amount of revenue. So these are different terms and conditions that are associated. So like financial and operational burden, you can say, is fairly low. There are not enough numbers that you need to generate. You need to have some prototype, some market validation, but not completely. So it's like the financial and operational burden is fairly low. Jumping onto the next set of ways on how you can raise funding is the crowdfunding. So crowdfunding can be of different types. So crowdfunding can be debt based crowdfunding, it could be equity based crowdfunding, it could be grant based crowdfunding. So like the mechanism remains the same, that obviously you are raising contributions from family, friends, audience, customers of your product. But the repayment methods, if any, or the expectations that these contributors have from you and from your company are different. So in case of grant based crowdfunding, which is that you are giving them money, but you don't have anything in return as an expectation. So there are different rewards to make you feel good for the contribution and donation that you're doing, but there is no expectation from the startup to do something in case of grant based. In case of debt, obviously you are raising it as a loan, which is something that I would cover on later as well, but just to kind of give you a brief sneak peek into that. So in crowd funding, which is debt based, you have an obligation to return that money with a certain percentage interest to all the contributors that have participated in your in your startup and in your fundraising campaign. Taking it to the extreme, which is something that I'm not going to focus, but just to mention it, that equity based crowdfunding also exists, that for every dollar or every rupee that you invest, you get a very minute stake in the company. So that is like you are an equity investor, but you could be like a minority based, you could be a minority equity investor. But this slide specifically covers on the grant, where there is no compulsion or no obligation for the startup to return anything in anything to the contributor, except for just to make them feel good. You could have some different levels of goodies or rewards for them in general, but there is no obligation as such. How common it is? Quite common for companies which have an established audience. So there is a clear demand for the product that contributors are willing to participate. And also with a startup or offering which is giving an experience or a product which is something that has a wow factor. So you would see some of this like the crowdfunding happening on Indiegogo or Kickstarter and similar platforms, where it's a very novel concept. A lot of people think it's something that is needed, and that's how your crowdfunding campaign gets success or like achieves its target. So financial and operational burden is fairly low beyond having certain legal and incorporation things. You don't need to have anything except for your product or the product that you are basically developing. Moving on, this is not really capital per se, but this is something which is helping you unlock capital. So you are trying to say take a loan from either a bank or from some other institution, but they have certain covenants in place that there needs to be a guarantor that this loan would be returned in due course of time, and like with terms and conditions that are met. So this is not directly capital providing, but this is indirectly unlocking or helping you unlock capital. So how common in the market? It is fairly common, and this is also something known as credit guarantee. This is done by, say, governments, where you have, say, government giving guarantees in case of student loans, in case of say farmer loans. Similarly, there are like schemes nowadays where government is even guaranteeing some of loans to either women entrepreneurs specifically as a focus group, or certain sections of entrepreneur that they think need support and encouragement. So this is basically they cover that in case you are not able to repay this loan, that particular organization, whether it is government or some other private company or some other academic institution, who would take the role of the the person who is raising, and they basically help you meet that objectives. So this is the loan guarantee, and not per se, as I mentioned, per se capital fundraising, but this can help you unlock capital. And this is typically best suited for startups or for projects where there is a downside, and the lender or the investor is basically trying to protect its downside. So this is a mechanism to kind of protect the downside that he has. Then there is a recoverable grant, which is very, very similar to the grant that I covered in my initial presentation, but this is recoverable. So you're expected to return this at a certain point of time, and in between, it could be with interest, it could be without interest. That is something that is based on the mutual agreement of the two parties, the investor and the startup raising money. And in case this amount is not returned within an agreed pre-agreed amount of time, then it is basically a write-off, that you don't have any like stake or a residual interest in the company anymore. So it is it would have to be written off from the books of the lender. How common is it in the market? It is fairly less common. There are not many instances of this recoverable grants, and it's also moderately difficult to obtain. The reason being that since like it is expected to be returned and is recoverable, like the financial and operational plans and business plan that you need to submit are fairly like stringent as well, that they need to understand from your financial models and from business plans that you would be able to return this grant at some point of time. So not exactly same, but trying to give you an analogy. So there are some organizations which give similar grants but in the higher education space, that it's a non-interest based study loan. So you might get, say, 4 lakhs or 5 lakhs. That is like there is no interest on that, but you are still expected to return that amount back once you complete your studies. So this is a very similar kind of a model where it is given to you for a specified amount of time. It could be with interest, without, or could be without interest, but then you are expected to return this amount back. So for which kind of startups or projects this could be really helpful is where there is the risk profiling or the risk assessment that you are doing is fairly like predictable, and there is a chance or outcome that the startup would get to either a revenue, or they would achieve product market fit. There are early signs of that already, and then within say 18-month period or like a 24-month period, there would be positive cash flow. And because of positive cash flow, the lender would be expected to recover his grant and the loan, like in a way it's like a quasi loan, that this quasi loan would be returned back. And this is typically used to pay for expenses that are typically like helping you achieve that positive cash flow situation. So it could be in for your productions, it could be for your capital expenditure, anything where it is helping you achieve the cash flow state for your startup. Moving on, this is like a PRI debt, or in other words, it's called as like principles of responsible investing, PRI based debt. This is typically done by charities or foundation, where they give it to very, very specific startups or players in the space. And the reason is that like traditional investors or capital providers would typically not touch this space. So just to take a case study or example, assume that there are entrepreneurs which are solving for rural or microfinance needs in the rural parts of the country. They know that because of the high risky nature of this like loans and financing that has been done, there are not many capital providers for that. So what this charity or foundation would do, they would advance it as a loan, but they would be the first ones to take a hit in case of a risk or a write-off happens. So they expect this money to be returned. So it's a debt instrument in that case. But in case it is not being able to return, they will take the first hit. And this is typically combined with a lender, or it could be a bank or other financial institution, where they take the second loss, or like in terms of waterfall, typically as you refer it. They are the first ones to take that risk. So this gives an incentive for other capital providers to typically lend to this startup or lend to this particular non-profit, because they're addressing a market which is very, very in need, but because of high risk nature, not many capital providers are coming forward. So that's why you find it very less common and moderately difficult to obtain. Only if the like target group and the sector and the other things match with the charity, then only they're typically able to advance it. Otherwise, like for fairly very standard startup, that might not be a very like a handy way to raise it. So this is very, very specific, where your mandate meets the charity or the foundation objectives as well. Coming on, this is the variable repayment debt. So this is that a loan is given, but with a customized, that in case you're in years where the startup is generating enough revenue, you would be like expected to pay a certain portion of it. In case in a future year the startup is under the weather, they are not able to generate profit, they're not able to generate cash flow, that there would be a moratorium over it. So like in that particular year, or like a series of years, till the startup is again profitable, they would not be like expected to pay. So this is very similar to some student loans that exist now, that in case your salary post your course is above a certain level, only on those years you make a payment, and then there is a specified duration. So it could be, say, for the first 10 years, and in the first 10 years, if that amount of loan that is extended to you is not recovered by the lending, it is still a write-off for them. So they might be able to recover completely the amount that they are lending, or they might be able to take a partial hit or a loss of the investment that they did. So this is typically like valid for companies and for entrepreneurs which need more flexible payment schemes, that like they are expanding into multiple, say, geographies, or they're expanding multiple business lines. Some of them are very new and very risky, so at the same time they want capital. So like in years where you are able to repay, you are expected to repay at a certain percentage of interest for a specified number of years. If that number of years is already taken care of, or you are able to return the capital with that particular rate of interest, then obviously there is no further repayment that is required, and there is no further residual interest in the company as well. And so this is something which is also suitable for companies or industry which have a very long tail. So that the initial few years you would not be profitable, or you would not be able to generate enough cash flow. But then when that phase is over, then you have sufficient cash flow. So like an e-commerce could be a good example of a tail company. Like they initial few years, they basically burn money before they start on the path of profitability. So this is typically for those companies which have a long tail, that the initial few years they will be under weather, and then over a period of time they would be able to recoup those investments. So this is typically for those investments. And given that this is a debt, this is something that is expected to be repaid from the residues, or basically the profit of the company. The financial burden, the operational burden is significant, and it's not very easy. This instrument to kind of this instrument is not very like easily available from lenders. This is only if they assess that risk profile matches their risk propensity. So only in those cases this typically works. Then this is something which is called as pay for success, or outcome based financing, or vendor financing, or customer financing. There is various terminologies which are used. This is typically based on a certain understanding that this amount is being lent to you for a specific outcome. So that specific outcome, for example, in like current scenario, could be deployment of vaccine, or like production of that vaccine. So this could be between a government agency, between a service providing organization, like, say, example, if you take like a pharma company or a foundation, that only if you are able to achieve a certain outcome, they are giving you in a way either a partial or full advance for achieving a certain outcome, because you might be, say, a startup which is into very early stages. You don't have the necessary like capex things, or you need certain investments into your business before you can achieve that particular outcome. So this is very, very specifically tied to that outcome, or and it could come from some, in some cases, even vendors, even in case of customers, also in case the client is a government or a government agency, it can also come from the client. So like, just to give you an example, so like any BOT, which is build, operate, transfer things, like either it's a parking or a toll, government might be able to extend this, like, in case you are able to completely build, we are giving you a certain percentage money upfront, and then the rest of the money is to be contributed by you for doing the BOT. That everything else that you do, you would recoup after that project gets live and you start making that repayments back. So this is help like there is a definitely need for the product. So you have an established audience, they are ready to kind of buy into your risk profile, that you have a certain achievable or a predictable outcome that you would achieve, and just to help you get there or support you get there, they are able to advance this. Coming to the crowdfunding debt, something which I briefly touched in the initial parts of the presentation. This is a very typical crowdfunding mechanism, but specifically focused on the debt, that you are expected to pay this, and you could do it with like send like as part of a product development, that those product that you are like buying for, you would be able to advance it using those. So say there is a chocolate manufacturer or a biscuit manufacturer, so they are taking a debt, but then that debt can be offset against the future promise for a particular, or delivering a particular product or service, or it could be just a typical standard loan, but this is like crowdfunded, which means like many people, and through a platform you're raising debt or a loan from multiple people. Like crowdfunding either as a grant or a equity is fairly common, but debt part is something which is less common, and also moderately difficult to get, because since it is based on the future financing and future cash flow situation of the company, the financial and operational burden is also like medium in terms of difficulty, as well as not very common instrument used as well. Then like something which I have, which basically just stops before the equity, is the convertible debt, where you are advancing it as a debt instrument, but in company is not able to meet its debt obligations, then you have a chance to convert it into equity, which obviously makes you like a typical equity investor once that event happens. So this is this equity event, or this event could be pre-decided, that if you raise a future fundraise, or if you hit a certain target in terms of revenue or achieve a certain stage, that could be pre-decided, or it could kick on as a default, that because you're not able to meet a certain debt obligation, that automatically gets converted into equity. So like it can work in those ways. So the expectation here is that you would repay with interest, but if that is not possible because of either something that you decided in advance or something that you're not able to meet, then it gets converted into equity. So this is is a fairly common instrument. So even the venture debt funds that are existing in India, like Trifecta Capital, Alteria Capital, and all, they operate on this mechanism that they help you with this instrument because of two things. So entrepreneur does not want to dilute. So although he wants to raise say $5 million, but he does not want to raise all $5 million as equity. Say he wants to raise 4+1. So 4 is equity, 1 is debt. And the upside is that because they can get converted into equity, they have a future stake in the company. But if you are completely able to repay with interest, then obviously you just pay a interest portion of that over that 1 million and repay in due course of time, which where when you achieve a certain revenue or achieve a certain stage in your life cycle. So this also sometimes serves as a bridge financing, where you are in between rounds, typically equity rounds, and you need a small amount of money to achieve a stage where you are able to raise that future fundraise. So you are say between angel and series A, or you are between series A and series B. So this instrument can typically work there as well, where your needs are short term and intermediate. You are fairly confident of raising a future future equity round, or you are fairly certain on achieving your revenues and cash flows. So that's why you typically raise your convertible debt rounds. So with that, I am done with my presentation and what I wanted to cover. Like happy to take on any questions that that the audience might have.
So I actually have something. I really like the beehive structure, the hive structure that you found. If you could just project that again once on the hive structure. And if I want to break it down uh, to so many people who would be seeing this today or later in their part of the years, the hive structure that we have has three different connotations that you have put together. There's a green color one which is more about recoverable grants, loan guarantees, crowdfunding. Then there are the yellow ones which say about grants, competitions, and revenue base, and the blue ones, right? The pay for success, PRI, variable rate, right? Now, if I'm a startup, if I'm just a budding entrepreneur, I do not have much idea of what my stages would be, how my plans would be. But if I have an idea for a solution, supposedly, right, and I'm a budding entrepreneur who's not completed about 6 months or so, I started working on my idea. I've got some loan from my parents, some from my friends, relatives. Now I need support, right? And I'm at that phase that if I don't get that support in the right direction, I might lose it in the next 7-8 months. So what do you think? Should I be on a lookout towards the yellow ones, the grants, competitions, and revenue-based financing? Should I touch upon that, or what should be my focus? What have you seen, Swaran?
Sure. So I think given the situation that you just described and the context that you shared, out of the yellow one, so I think the yellow ones would be most relevant. But within the yellow ones also, like revenue-based financing is typically out because you're already not generating revenue. So typically the ones which are like you're eligible for is grants or competitions. So grants could be when you are say like working on the research and development part of your product. uh, like you could raise grant money for that part, or you could look for competitions. And if I have to like choose between these two as well, like I would say like competitions are fairly easy amongst grants and competition, because with grants there is a certain expectations that you would have achieved a certain stage already, uh, while competitions even are for budding entrepreneurs, that there is a particular organization that wants to fund entrepreneurs which are solving a particular problem. And like just to share some examples, like even the calls that say NITI Aayog or Invest India, Startup India, they typically, as you would be more aware than me, like they have certain corporate companies which have certain specific challenges that they are facing as part of their larger problem or a smaller subsection of their business lines. So they are even ready to fund people who given this problem or this problem statement, are ready to kind of work on a solution for that. So competitions slash challenges would be my first bet, I would say, if I have to raise money in the situation that you described. And secondly, I would focus on the grants part, because depending on which the kind of organization, they might also give it to organizations or startups which are like in the very very initial and early stages and just have a solution but don't have typically a product market fit and validation done. So like just to share my example, or specifically with Unleash, like we have some companies which are our partners. They give out grants anywhere from say $5,000 to $10,000 to even solutions. So like
Nice.
that product market fit is not there and other things are not there, but the entrepreneurs and the startup fairly know on how and when they would achieve it, and like they need that initial say money for developing their website, developing an app, or hiring some people. So my first stab would be at competition, and secondly at grants.
Oh, brilliant. And supposedly, if supposedly I have had started doing my work, I've just started making some money. Not, I cannot call it as a revenue, but some money, just to show the first line that my POC is working. And if I have those ideas, right, and the POC has started working, the market is giving me an acceptance. So then after that, what should be my line? Should I go towards some crowdfunding? Should I go towards a recoverable grant, or should I take some other line? Because see, revenue based financing, when you're saying it'll be tied to a higher amount, right? Grants would have a specific outcome that they're looking towards, and I do not have that much understanding of them supposedly, and I'm a startup right now. I'm just moving towards getting my POCs done. So should I move towards crowdfunding, loan guarantee, recoverable grant? Where should I be moving from there then?
So I think it would depend slightly on the sector, and but like if I have to still take like a stab at what typically options do you have. So there are two
Mhm.
options, I would say, which are fairly common, I would say, I've seen in this situation. So one is a recoverable grant and second is a loan guarantee. So like typically banks and other financial institutions are not ready to loan you, because obviously you are in a very risky state. You have just started revenues or almost about to achieve revenues. So like loan is something which is not there. So loan guarantee in that sense helps that you are able to achieve that loan, but then obviously it's a liability on you that you need to return this loan back.
Correct.
So this could work. The second is that yes, a recoverable grant is also there, which is obviously in terms of the beehive structure, very very similar to a grant. That's why you see like both of them being placed almost next to each other. The only difference being that for recoverable grants, it is like in terms of deployment, it is relatively easier than the normal grant, because normal grants are not recoverable. Once it is given, it is given. Recoverable, it is like a quasi loan where you are expected to return that back. So if a startup is in a stage where they've just started making revenues or on the path to making revenues, then recoverable grant would be a better suit, because the investor knows that this money would be returned back at a certain point of time.
Nice, nice. And supposedly, like if all these things are working, everything is going good for me, I still do not want to, give equity to someone else, right? My models are proven. There's a revenue that is coming, but I want to grow. So I want to be bootstrapped in a way. I want to grow. I do not want to give out the equity, but I need to move ahead, right, and scale my model, and move from one region to other, move geographies, or make a better product, or make a new variety of products. So, what would be the best kind of debt that I should be looking towards? And the second part to it is, are there people who will be able to guide me towards what kind of steps should I be taking? There are a lot of consultants around that, right? But I'm not really focusing on what kind of I am right trying to understand what kind of consultant, what should be my questions to that consultant to understand whether the person or the organization is relevant to what I am moving towards, and they'll be able to guide me. What should be my questions to them?
Sure. So, I think, let me answer your second question first, which is are there consultants out there? I would say, given that a lot of this is not like a fairly 0 or 1 approach, which is like either you get it or you don't get it. It is fairly complex process. So there are not many consultants out there, but there is a way where you can basically teach yourself on which one would work better in which scenario. So there are certain organizations that have come with kind of a diagnostic model, I would say, that you provide certain inputs. So I'm an early stage, I already have a product market fit, I am into early revenue, so you input those things into their model, which is obviously like a decision tree, and based on that it suggests you the best available options that you have. So there is in fact a course on this, which is a lot of this knowledge that I have is obviously from some of my experience, as well as a course that I did say with an academic institution called as Case, which is part of the Duke universities. They have a very good course on this, that goes even in depth into the due diligences that are required, and they have something which they call as a honeybee structure on a butterfly structure on different loan or impact capital providers. So there is this decision tree model that some organizations have put out in the open, which can help me find out which is the most relevant capital given my needs or my situation that I am in. So that could be one. I don't think there are many consultants out there in the market, because unlike equity, this is not a proven thing, and that this organization that I have to search are also like an iterative process, and not like there is not much knowledge about some of these funding mechanisms, or they have not become mainstream given the complex nature that they have. So I would say doing these courses or doing this diagnostic skills tests can help you figure out which are the most relevant impact capital providers for you in your particular situation. So that would be my best suggestion, I would say.
Brilliant, brilliant. And do you think, for me, yeah, I know, but I really want to understand from you that do you think that a good startup or a good idea should always approach maybe a nearby incubator or an accelerator, just to get an understanding of whether there is a good product market fit, whether I should be continuing in this idea for the next 6-8 months, as they say, right? Fail fast, instead of losing time. It's time that is more important
Right.
than the idea, right? So it's
Right.
good to fail fast, right? So is it that we should be approaching incubators, accelerators, getting an understanding of whether my idea really fits in, and should I talk to maybe a mentor? What are those points that you really think on?
Sure. So I think there are two approaches, and obviously it would depend on where you stand in that journey, I would say. So if you are fairly confident of getting the right mentorship or advice from people who can guide you on the journey, there is a possibility that you can altogether skip the accelerator or incubator model and just take the help of those specific people who either have operational experience and been in that situation, in which case you can obviously skip this part, accelerator and incubator. Like the specific aspect that you are asking about, which is do I understand if this is something that the market is needing, or that my customers can give me that validation? I think they can help you in the process part of it, like they can help you figure out, say, things that you need to do, and how would you measure yourself if the customers are liking your product or not, or have you achieved product market fit or not. So they can help you with the process, but ultimately it is the customer who has to pay the money from his or her pocket, who is the best judge on whether this is something that they really need. Uh, in which case, is this a painkiller or a vitamin? So vitamin would be something which is just additional and good to have or good to know, but this is not something which is solving a problem, which is like a painkiller. So ultimately the best judge is the customer or the market, but accelerators have, like, from their experience of running so many processes for so many startups, they have figured out, I would say, like a very scientific way in some sense of helping you achieve there, or like get to the right like stage there, helping figure out all the variables and things that you need to do to achieve that product market fit or that customer fit. But if you think that you have the right set of mentors, advisors, and people who you can seek support from, help from, then obviously you can skip that part and achieve the same stage, which is product market fit, using their support and help.
Great, great, great. So I think today I've got a lot of clarity on what non-dilutive capital would be, what could be my different steps that I can take, and what are the different options that I have as an entrepreneur moving into the world of entrepreneurship. Because obviously it's a big sea, and I have to go one by one, take a step at a time, right? So a
Right.
lot of things that you've provided, I think, should help a lot of our entrepreneurs and budding startup ideators to what should be my steps. It's not always about equity. There are other ways of funding that are available. Not everything is not common. There are some uncommon techniques, there are some common techniques.
Right.
If I can find the right person and the right fit for it, right, then it's the best way for moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a very iterative process. So it's not that only if I have done something I can achieve that other stage. A lot of times it is like an iterative process. You start something, you figure out, and if it does not work, you figure out, okay, what is the most alternative process, or the best alternative to achieving the same goal, which is raise money, but in a very different manner, in a very different context. So like this honeybee structure is not like a to B and B to C kind of a thing, but is morely to give a very good overview on what are the all my options. And obviously my presentation is also not, I would say, exhaustive or covers 100% of it, but these are like fairly, I would say, 75 to 80% of the mechanisms that exist and can help people as they are raising their equity rounds, or as they're raising their non-dilutive rounds as well. Because I've seen some people complement their uh, equity-based rounds with non-dilutive funding, that they are getting the same amount of capital, but they have to shed less equity for the same amount of money, using some of these tricks or some of these mechanisms, and achieve their outcomes and the next stages that they are like looking to raise with that same amount of capital.
Right. And that's how it is actually. Every entrepreneur finds their own way and
Yeah,
the ways to raise their own money. Right.
exactly.
So thank you so much, Karan. Thank you so much about explaining us so many things on non-dilutive capital, how not only equity, but without equity you could raise funds, what could be your different steps. And I look forward to talking to you obviously offline to understand a little more, and hopefully connecting with you on different startups that I work with. Thank you
Sure.
so much.